You're watching UATV News. My name is Inna Kosinska. Good evening. The energy security of Ukraine and Europe was discussed by the President of Ukraine, Volodymyr Zelensky, and the President of the Federal Republic of Germany, Frank-Walter Steinmeier, in Kyiv. The Ukrainian leader noted that the start of Nord Stream 2 is a significant threat to Ukraine and Europe. It is important for Ukraine to get an international legal mechanism that will guarantee security. The heads of the states also discussed the issues of a peaceful settlement of the situation in Donbass.
We look forward to further effective support from Germany. We very much appreciate Berlin's mediation efforts within the Normandy format. We are also grateful to Germany for participating in the Crimean Platform Summit and joining its final declaration. President of Ukraine Volodymyr Zelensky, official website of the Office of the President of Ukraine.
Latvia is going to hold an international conference on Crimea occupied by Russia. Deputy Speaker of the Sejm stated this during a meeting in Kyiv with the Deputy Chairman of Verkhovna Rada of Ukraine, Olena Kondratyuk. It is also planned to participate in the development of mechanisms for the peninsula occupation called the Crimean Platform. The issue of Euro-Atlantic integration of Ukraine was also discussed at the meeting. High gas prices in Europe are due to the dependence on imports. This was stated by the European Commissioner for Energy, Kadri Simpson, at a meeting of the European Parliament in Strasbourg. According to her, overcoming the energy crisis can be done by investing in renewable sources. And in the next 10 years, Europe plans to reach 65% renewable electricity.
This price shock cannot be underestimated. It is hurting our citizens and in particular the most vulnerable households, weakening competitiveness and adding to inflationary pressure. If left unchecked, it risks compromising Europe's recovery as it takes hold. There is no question that we need to take policy measures. Europe has gone through high energy prices many times in the past and responded to them through diversification of supply sources and market integration.
Ukraine offered to pump 80 million cubic meters of gas a day to the European Union. The head of the Ukrainian GTS operator, Serhiy Makuhon, wrote about this on his Facebook. According to him, Europe wants to create strategic gas reserves, and since Ukraine has the largest storage facilities in Europe, it could become an important part of the EU's energy security system. He stated that in order not to allow Russia to use weapons against Ukraine or Europe, at least 45 billion cubic meters of fuel should be pumped through the territory of our country per year. Meanwhile, the Russian president said that it would be more profitable for Gazprom to pay a fine for Ukraine for stop in transit and to increase pumping along new routes. Recently, Moscow and Budapest signed a gas treaty. Russia will annually supply 4.5 billion cubic meters of gas to Hungary, bypassing Ukraine for 15 years. The agreement entered into force on October 1st. Heat supply facilities are 99% ready for the heating season. This was announced by the Deputy Minister of Community and Territorial Development of Ukraine, Natalka Hotsianivska. According to her, the state will provide support to the regions. In turn, self-government bodies will not allow an increase in heating tariffs. To support the regions in the issue of a stable heating season, the government plans to send an additional 4% on personal income tax to local budgets. The heating season must start on time. In the coming days, a red level of epidemic danger may be established in several regions of Ukraine. Such prognosis the Cabinet of Ministers made. This means that cinemas, cafes, gyms and other public places will be able to work only if all employees and visitors are fully vaccinated. Meanwhile, the number of new cases of COVID-19 is growing. Over the past day, 12,500 new cases were registered. My colleagues will tell what is the situation with the new wave of the pandemic in different regions of Ukraine.
The situation with coronavirus in Ukraine has gained an alarming scale. The Prime Minister talked about this at a government meeting. New cases of COVID-19 confirm his words, plus 12,662 for the last day. There are many new hospitalizations, severe cases. We are deploying additional hospitals. We are involving more doctors, as we see that in some regions the situation is alarming. It is about Kharkiv, Kherson and Zaporizhia regions. They already meet red level of epidemic danger criteria. So in Kharkiv only during last 24 hours, while veterans hospital was filled by half with patients who have a severe form of coronavirus. From 256 beds, 146 are occupied. The intensive care unit designed for 6 patients is busy. The admission of new patients has been suspended. 110 patients were admitted during past day. It is impossible to work at such pace every day. We have to provide patients our help, diagnostics. If the region establishes red level of epidemic danger, only vaccinated groups will be allowed to work. If 100% of staff is vaccinated at places of public catering, shopping centers, shops and the rest, small and medium businesses, they will continue to work even in the red zone. This is very important. A threatening situation is in Lviv region. There are queues of ambulances at Kyiv hospital. The number of patients who need hospitalization is growing. Doctors say many being sent immediately to intensive care.
Earlier, we had patients of an older age with comorbidities. Recently, we have young people with atypical symptoms, but at the same time in an extremely serious condition. The situation is actually very, very difficult.
It's scary because people die, people get sick. Starting from the 14th of October, red level of epidemic danger may be established in Lviv. This means that schools will switch to remote mode and planned surgeries will be cancelled in hospitals with COVID patients. But even lockdown risk didn't make citizens to follow basic quarantine rules.
They do not follow, unfortunately. For example, I submitted documents today. The employee was without a mask.
Kherson region is formally still in the orange zone, but to avoid collapse in some communities, additional restrictions have already been introduced. It is forbidden to hold mass events, celebrations at restaurants and cafes, as well as mass events and parent meetings in educational institutions. Zhytomyr, Sumy, Khmelnytsky and Chernivtsi regions are also at risk. Reported by Nick Starkov, Natalia Belokudra, Yulia Bil, Yanina Lebedeva for UATV News.
More than 122,000 people got vaccinated from COVID-19 over the past day. 914 mobile teams and more than 3,000 vaccination centers worked throughout the country. Almost 6 million Ukrainians have already completed the full course of immunization. In Ukraine, there is a sufficient number of vaccines from different manufacturers. The Ministry of Health is encouraged to contact the vaccination centers. On the 80th anniversary of the mass shootings in Babyn Yar in Kyiv, on the territory of the Babyn Yar Holocaust Memorial Center, a new object was opened, the Crystal Wall of Wailing. The ceremony was attended by the presidents of 3 countries, Israel, Germany and Ukraine. Our correspondent will tell you more. Dmitry Bykov is one of the few who survived the Holocaust. He said that 29 people from his family died in the concentration camp. He came to Babyn Yar to honor their memory.
Odessa, where I lived and was born, suffered from the massacres, and this is very important for me because a huge number of people died. Almost 200,000 people died where they drove us. Specifically, the place where I was in a concentration camp, 54,600 people died. 29 of my family died and only 4 of us left.
There is an opportunity to remember the lost relatives at the Crystal Wall of Wailing. 8 years ago, in just 2 days, more than 33,500 Jews were shot at this place. This is one of the largest art objects in Europe, built over the past decade. The installation was created by the famous conceptual artist Marina Abramovich.
This is why this wall is so important for young generation. To me, young generation is the one who can carry the memory, because there's very few people left. Yesterday, I have the really old lady who all family was killed here, and she came without any, because we didn't have instructions what to do. She just came herself, stand in the front of the wall and cry. And I came to her, I said, what happened? She said, thank you to do something that I have the point that I can have my memory back. And this was the point for her, because nothing was here built at all that you can bring this memory.
The wall is 40 meters long and 3 meters high. The main materials used in the installation are Ukrainian anthracite coal and quartz crystals from Brazil. The installation with the artist was opened by the President of Ukraine, Israel and Germany.
Every month, new objects appear here, which in a few years will become part of this single large-scale complex, the memory of Babyn Yar. It will allow to fully experience the horror and pain of suffering that Nazism, racism, anti-Semitism, xenophobia and intolerance bring to humanity. Unfortunately, this will not help those killed, but it will help the living, those who should know about it, remember.
At the place of the mass execution, the 13th Symphony of Dmitry Shostakovich Babyn Yar sounded. It was performed by the State Symphony Orchestra of Germany.
Сьогодні на церемонію в Babyn
World leaders, representatives of Jewish communities who survived the Holocaust, as well as those who saved Jews, came to the ceremony in Babyn Yar. The day before, President of Israel, Isaac Herzog, met in Kyiv with representatives of the Jewish community and also opened the Jewish National Fund.
It's very important, not only for Ukrainian people, also for us, for Israel people, that we are refound here in Ukraine the very important work from the National Fund, Keren Kayemet Israel. We are very proud to do it here after 100 years without any activities here in Ukraine. And of course, this is our proof of living in this world now after so bad experience during the Second War.
Після завершення
After the ceremony, an official meeting was held with the participation of the President of Ukraine and heads of foreign states. Reported by Yulia Hranovska, UATV News. Museum where it is not forbidden to touch the exhibits. Moreover, you have the possibility to interact with them. The first state museum of science in Ukraine celebrates the anniversary of its foundation. In 2020, it was opened by the President of Ukraine, Volodymyr Zelensky. Since that time, the Science Museum at the National Expo Center was visited by over 100,000 of guests. Our correspondent knows for sure what attracts adults and children most of all. The Science Museum ruins many stereotypes. For example, only here it is possible to ride a bike with square wheels.
Each exhibit of the museum can and should be interacted with. Boring terms and formulas from textbooks come to life here, move, vibrate, light up, and become understandable for the youngest visitors. You can learn a lot of interesting things. It was interesting to watch the crystals. I really liked kinetic sand. It is always wet and it is very easy to make something out of it.
You need to insert a picture, twist, and look into the cracks. This is how we used to watch movies.
The teacher decided to conduct a lesson for second graders. I learned about the world at the Science Museum.
It was necessary to convey the laws of physics and chemistry in an easy, accessible form for children. We stopped at the force of gravity. Here it was interesting for the children, investigated the sound, what physical properties it has.
The museum exposition consists of 7 blocks. Among them, great inventions, man, acoustics, optics. Teams from Ukraine, Canada, USA, Poland and Sweden worked on them. Here's a NASA-designed model for spacecraft refueling. It is based on the action of a magnet on a ferromagnetic liquid.
We activate the lower magnet, conditional the magnet in the spacecraft fuel tank. And we activate the second magnet, conditional magnet in the engine of the spacecraft and see how the fuel is pumped from the tank to the engine.
In this museum, you realize very clearly that science is everywhere. Children and adults become one team while exploring the exhibits.
In this museum, you realize that behind you every action there is an invention or discovery of some scientist. This space is about the fact that science is not some kind of excuse-it, empty clean test tubes and transfusions grow in something boring. Science is here and now. Science is fun and great.
In the near future, the employees of the Minor Academy of Sciences are planning to open a science museum in Vinnytsia and a mathematics museum in Kyiv. Reported by Nick Starkov, Olena Diduch for UATV News.
That's all for this hour. More updates on our official website, YouTube, Twitter and Facebook pages. Thank you for staying with the UATV channel. See you tomorrow. Goodbye.